Welcome, everyone, to the Roast War and Everything. This is our first show of 2025. Thank you for joining us. We have with you, of course, myself, Fenian, and Nolsey, and
Hello.
Fluoride as well, who has joined us a few times on the Race Alive. So, we're trying out a trio for the Races War. Not something we do very often, but we'll see how it goes. We've certainly got a fair bit to cover today, as we usually do. First of all, I just wanted to say that I mentioned the Race Alive. Right now, we're going to put that on hold. It's basically to do with scheduling crashes and stuff of mine. So I'd still like to do the show. Maybe we would shift it around. I don't know. We'll certainly keep you posted on it. But yeah, as of now, unfortunately, that's on the back burner.
Well,
All
now
right,
this
so-
is my first recorded show in like my proper new place and etc. in my new studio. I would like to do my own show. I'm still working out some kinks and etc. But I'm looking to do a more casual weekend show or something like that.
Yeah, and who knows if the Race Alive doesn't turn out, we can just kind of put more focus into that show. Assuming that I'm welcome on it every now and then.
Oh, of course. I think you'll be very disappointed in its content, but
Yeah, I don't know how much I can contribute to that, but we'll see. All right. Okay, so I think, unsurprisingly, we are going to open today's show with a discussion on the surge in anti-Semitism that we apparently have here in Australia. And, well, look, while we've been away, there has been a countless amount of, supposed attacks and incidences that have happened since Christmas or so. Every time one of these happens, we're told that the Labor Party is not doing enough, that they're not using strong enough language, or they're not giving enough money, or they're not going to Israel enough, or not going to the sites of these attacks quickly enough, all these kind of things. So, just to go through a couple that have come up. This is by no means covering all of them, but we just had an egging at Bondi Beach. So apparently there were three guys in a silver Mazda, who threw eggs at three young women at Bondi Beach, apparently because of how they were dressed. They said that how they were dressed clearly gave away that they were Jewish. I'm not exactly sure what that looked like. Maybe draped the Israeli flag or something.
Perhaps some shirts.
how I don't even think Yentas fucking put on full Israeli regalia at the fucking beach, even the most nationalistic of them. What were they wearing? Frums?
I don't know. I mean, obviously, when males dress up with a kippa or whatever, curly side locks and that kind of thing, they stand out a lot more. Yeah, I'm not really sure how it goes for females. But what was funny is that these guys, after apparently doing this egging at the three women in question, they drove their silver Mazda to Rose Bay, otherwise known as Nose Bay, one of the very affluent eastern Sydney suburbs that has a very high Jewish population. And they apparently just dumped the car there and ran off. Now, remember, that's the kind of thing that you do after you rob a bank or something, you get a stolen car, you rob the bank, and then you ditch the car later on so that there's nothing kind of connecting you to what's going on. These guys seem to have done something very similar, assuming it's true. This is why I find it hard to believe. Why would you do an egging and then, actually abandon your vehicle like that? It really doesn't make much sense. Okay, now the other one. I think actually, yeah, I've only got three here. The other one was the Caravan. So this was dumped on a side of a road in New South Wales.
It was all over the news.
Yeah, it was apparently full of explosives, and it apparently had a handwritten note that had the address of a nearby synagogue. So I guess from that, we are to assume that the driver was headed to that address and planned to blow it up with the explosives that were in this caravan. Now, we'll say more on that in a bit. I just want to go to the third one, just to say that anti-Semitic incidents seem to have now hit Perth. They've hit WA.
Oh, God, yeah.
So this was in the suburb of Dalkeith, which, if you don't know, is... we don't have, as many Jews here as we do in Melbourne and Sydney. But the ones who are here...
Dalkeith has a fair few.
Okay, well, look, they tend to reside in the northern wealthy suburbs, like Dalkeith and Dianella, places like that.
Serrano.
Yeah. So this was a home in Viking Road on Dalkeith where there was apparently a swastika and the words "fuck Jews," which seems to be a very common tag that's going around at the moment in the various graffiti attacks that we've got. Now, back on this caravan, Anthony Albanese said that he wouldn't say whether or not he had been briefed by police and intelligence on the act. And Peter Dutton is saying that it would be astounding if Anthony Albanese may have been kept in the dark about an apparent major anti-Semitic plot in Sydney. And this is at the same time as Peter Dutton is looking to take on Elon Musk and Twitter, or X, on the growth of neo-Nazi and other extremist content on that platform. So I love that. He's taking on the big guys like Elon Musk to get to small guys like us, I guess, and what's going on here. Now, everyone seems to be assuming that this attack is for real. I watched Josh Frydenberg on the 7:30 report the other night, and 7:30 didn't seem to be raising any questions whatsoever about this. Peter Dutton obviously is not raising any questions. Anthony Albanese is not raising any questions. Everyone is assuming that this is just a genuine attempt at terrorism of a local Jewish synagogue. Now, anyone who watched the Blair and Joel show last week would have seen they did cover this. And they pointed out that, amazingly, there is actually one well-known mainstream, I guess you could call him, commentator who has questioned this, and that was Andrew Bolt.
Bolt, so, Jew lover himself.
Yeah, I couldn't believe this because, he is absolutely a Jew lover. He's an ardent Zionist, despite the fact that Jews have thrown him under the bus previously when it came to his conviction under Section 18C. That seemed to have done nothing for him to keep singing the praises of Israel and Australian Jews. But he did say that this looks suspicious, as in, what kind of an attacker would just, have a handwritten note with the address on? I mean, no one writes down addresses anymore, for God's sake. We all put them in our phones.
Also, the caravan was found on the side of a main country road, just left there.
Right. And I mean, I think someone, towed it away.
Yeah, towed it. Yeah, towed it basically because, it was on this fucking, the corners of this road, literally in a dangerous position where anyone would tow it. So they towed it, called the police, be like, hey, look, I've done this. I've removed this vehicle from here. There was no occupants, blah, blah, blah. And obviously the police show up, look inside and be like, oh my God, there's fucking explosives and a handwritten note about all these synagogues. Right. And then they go and arrest the owner, who said he leased it out, and basically the lease was literally no information lease. By the way, the owner is still in custody because there's literally so little information on the document that he provided about who was actually using this caravan that that they suspected him of doing it, but in all likelihood, it was just a dumb fucking. Well, they've actually released the photo of the owner. He looks like a fucking idiot, and I don't think he looks like someone who would be a fervent anti-Semite. I'll put it that way.
No, and I doubt anyone in the country would try something as brazen as this anyway. So
I don't think they would care.
But it's amazing though that like no media outlet seems to want to actually raise the idea that this might have been fake. And not just this, but all the other attacks. I mean, the supposed firebombing on the synagogue, where you had two Jews for some reason studying there at 4:30 in the morning, and one of them burned his hand trying to get through a door. No one is questioning any of this except guys like us, and I guess Andrew Bolt now. So I just wonder how quickly the Jewish handlers are going to get onto Bolt's back about this.
He's probably going to shut up real quick, or maybe we might get some interesting things out of what he's saying. Might be worth a listen or two, or to hear the silence at least.
Yeah.
The silence is going to be the answer.
That might be it, yeah. I suspect that that Bolt basically just won't say anything about this again. All right. Now, looking at the opposite end here, looking at Australian Muslims and Arabs, there has been a formal complaint being lodged at the Australian Human Rights Commission. So this is from a Sydney-based law firm called Birchgrove Legal. And I believe last time I looked at these guys, it was basically a bunch of Lebanese Australians who run.
I was going to say, I remember that name.
Yeah, and also, what they're actually known for is protecting West Sydney gangland figures.
Yeah. Wasn't this the one where one of their members got fucking gunned down?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes,
yeah, that's right.
That's why I remember that. Yeah.
Before. Now, what's amazing about this though is that there's a group of 10 complainants. Now that includes a prominent Palestinian Australian named Nasser Mashini, but it also involves a Jewish professor, Peter Slezak. Now, this cites 25 separate incidents where they are alleging racial hatred in the statements given by Peter Dutton. So, I don't know, things basically about the Israel-Gaza conflict, and I guess criticizing certain members of the Muslim community for anti-Semitism and, basically a lot of race hatred coming from their community. They're trying to turn it around on Dutton and saying, well, actually, no, you're the racist one because you keep saying that Arabs and Muslims are the ones perpetrating all of this hatred against the Jews. Now, Dutton said that he is aware of the complaint, but he says it completely lacks credibility. And
so here's the scrutiny. That's where all the scrutiny went for all these other incidents. It went all went over here, huh?
Right. And I mean, look, he says that they lack credibility and they won't go anywhere. But, at the same time, he's always demanding more and more action against anti-Semitism. And a lot of the time, these incidents are either made up, as I'm sure the Caravan incident is, or they're just, very minor. I mean, I don't think the ECAJ have come out with a 2024 report on incidents of anti-Semitism. But whenever we look through that report, there's always just these really, really small ones, like beeping of car horns against Jews.
Yeah. Like fucking high beams and etc. Again, it's the 3 M's of anti-Semitism in Australia. It's Mossad, Muhammad, and manufactured.
Yeah, that's right.
Unfortunately, I'm not very fond of that last one the most.
Yeah, and I think the biggest incidents that we hear of, like the Caravan, like the synagogue fire bombing, they're manufactured, and they're absolutely coming from um, Australian Jews. And there's even I've heard like Tom, Blair, and Joel talk about how there's actually evidence now that Australian criminals are getting paid to carry out some of these more minor attacks like vandalism, claiming that they've been paid through cryptocurrency. And, considering that so many of these attacks contain swastikas that are just not drawn correctly or misspells the word Israel or Israeli, it suggests that it's coming from just like really uneducated crooks. So, I mean, anyone who's actually educated would make sure that they spell Israeli correctly. And that has not been happening. Not of the ones I've seen anyway. Okay, so let's look at further responses to the uptick in anti-Semitism. So the former Liberal minister, most well known for being health minister, Greg Hunt, he has called on the current Albanese government to make a national parliamentary apology to Australian Jews. So think of when Kevin Rudd made the apology to Aborigines, of the stolen generation. That is what Greg Hunt is demanding right now for Australian Jews. For what? Like the past 15 months or so, since October 7 or the day after. And by doing so, what you're doing is admitting fault of the government, the Australian government.
A blank check.
That's what Kevin Rudd did. And, that did mean at the time that you had civil cases brought against the Australian government looking for compensation. Because, that's what you can do, isn't it? If the government admits responsibility for an act that caused a lot of pain, emotional suffering, well, you are allowed then to take a civil case against that body, in that case, the Australian government. Now, can you imagine what would happen if the Australian government actually did that and you had Jewish groups then taking the Australian government to court looking for compensation for emotional damage, etc.? You would have Arnold Bloch-Leibler probably representing them, and they would bleed the government absolutely fucking dry.
It would be a bigger fleecing the entire fucking, the entire fucking like shearing industry in this country for all of eternity.
God.
Talk about a pound of flesh. We're talking about gigatons here, people.
But yeah, that fault can go on forever and ever. You can't remove it. And the more of these incidents that happen, basically, they've created a cottage industry of hate.
Israel still puts out memos against the Egyptian government, blaming them for slavery or supposed slavery that happened 4,500 years ago.
What, like against the pharaoh?
Yes. I'm not joking. They mention it.
I didn't mention that, but I was just going to bring up the example of the fact that Germany, to this day, continues to pay reparations to the state of Israel.
It was like for the first 30 years of Israel's existence, Germany was basically 80% of its GDP.
Oh, nice.
And then they got they basically bought their way into earning some heavy industries and actually managed to coddle their secular cousins abroad into actually funneling money back. So yeah, it only stopped because they found more diverse sources to parasite off.
Okay, well, yeah. To this day, Germany's not off the hook yet, and
no.
I don't think there's any plans to get them off the hook either. It'll just be done in perpetuity, unless the state of Israel collapses.
Oh, God.
God willing.
Okay. So, in terms of hate speech laws. Now, remember, this was legislation that basically died at the end of last year. Labor realized that they were not going to get it through the Senate, so they decided just not to push it through at all. However, they said they were going to go back to drafting it, back to the drawing board with it, and they are planning to reintroduce it at some point. So at the time, it wasn't really addressing the huge surge in anti-Semitism, although, of course, it would still address concerns of the Jewish community and also balancing that against religious interests as well. Remember, a lot of the religious groups and churches don't like the idea of strengthening these hate speech laws because it affects them.
Mm.
What if they want to say, biblical things about homosexuals, for example? It will definitely affect them. Now,
Would a fundamentalist Mormon like to say the same things about the sons of Cain?
Right. So look, as anyone can guess, considering they're redrafting those laws now, they are obviously going to be looking at the current situation and tailoring the laws accordingly. Now, an independent MP, Teal, Allegra Spender, is proposing amendments that would actually strengthen Labor's hate crime legislation. So it would criminalize acts that promote hatred. So that could actually mean things like graffiti or just simply saying critical things about Jews or Zionism or Israel.
Are we at the point of both real and imaginary?
Well, look, here's what is actually real here. She is she holds the seat of Wentworth, which is actually the electorate with the highest Jewish population in the country. Mm-hmm. This is Malcolm Turnbull's former seat. It's also the seat
Waverley Council.
It's the former seat also of David Sharma, Australia's ambassador to Israel, who now sits in the Senate. But anyway, Wentworth is one of these electorates where many of these so-called anti-Semitic attacks have been occurring. Now, remember, Jews seem to be more and more aligning themselves with right-of-centre politics in Australia. As we've said before, they kind of, the majority always has sort of been, aligned with the Liberal Party. That seems to be going even further, though, now. Even someone like Mark Liebler, who is probably the prime architect of the Aboriginal Voice to Parliament, even he has been turning in more of a neoconservative direction and has talked about things like cutting Muslim immigration to Australia. But anyway, I mention this because, Allegra Spender is a Teal. She's, supposedly like a centrist who supports a lot of liberal economic policies, but has her own take on climate change. In other words, she's further to the left on climate change than what the Libs are. Now, she had been going out to just about every incident where this had happened. She made sure she got in and didn't make the mistake of Albanese and, left behind playing tennis or something. Whenever there was a firebombing or a bit of vandalism or anything like that, she was straight out there for the photo ops and meeting all of these men with funny little hats. So this is something that the Teals are definitely positioning themselves for. They want to make sure that they are seen just as much, if not more than the Liberal Party, as fighting this scourge of anti-Semitism. Why would they be doing that? Well, because all of their seats have heaps of Jews in them, right? Not just Wentworth. Look at a seat like Werriwa, Tony Abbott's former seat. Look at the seat of Goldstein. Big surprise there. There's a lot of Jews in that seat as well. All right. And,
it's no... I wouldn't even say they need to do too much effort on this front, really, because they are natural. The natural political party of the Jews. They are socially destructive and fiscally retentive. Like I said, how many years ago, go and do poppers and keep your daddy's money.
Yep.
But now we can
definitely
add.
North Shore.
Now we can add, fucking polish the menorah and keep your daddy's kipper on.
Well, it depends. I mean, they have to outdo each other. That is the Liberals versus the Teals. Remember back when Dave Sharma won the seat of Wentworth, this is the seat we're talking about, Allegra Spender's seat. That was when he promised to move the Australian embassy in Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, in line with what Donald Trump had announced at the time. And that basically won it for Dave Sharma. He won against that lesbian, I can't remember her name. She was a lesbian convert to Judaism. Okay, so even the Teal all the way back then, was pandering to the Jews.
Did we get our own Donald Heights somewhere for doing that, or were we just ignored for our virtue signals?
Well, I mean, like I said, Dave Sharma was rewarded and he won that seat. But no, I don't think anything ever really came of that. And also, Labor scrapped that proposal to have the embassy moved to Jerusalem. I don't know if that's still on the table now for the Libs. It probably is.
Probably a big priority.
Yeah. But no, I mean, if you look at also, I mentioned the seat of Goldstein, that's held by Zoe Daniel, a former ABC journalist. And she actually made like a public letter, or she signed it, like criticizing Israeli action on the Gaza Strip. And she basically had to publicly retract that after the Jewish lobby got on her back. So any anti-Israel sentiment that she may have exhibited before has well and truly been hidden now. And yeah, the Teals are just wanting to go full pro-Jew, just as much as the Libs are. Now, people keep asking the question, or they certainly keep going on about this on Sky News. Oh, and they asked this of Josh Frydenberg too when he was on 7:30, was, will this be an election issue? Now, there are approximately 116,000 Jews in Australia. They tend to be primarily concentrated in the affluent areas of Melbourne and Sydney, like the seat of Wentworth, for example. Now, I believe that in those seats, like Wentworth, like Goldstein, yeah, I would say that the Jews may have the deciding vote there. But as for this being a national issue, that would, say, be the deciding factors in marginal seats in Western Australia and South Australia, where we don't have as many Jews, I've got to say no. The response to all of these incidents in Australia has been extremely disproportionate, and not just by Sky News and The Australian. The ABC, they seem to be responding to criticism that they haven't been covering this issue enough. And they have been littering their own news coverage with all of this stuff. And as I said, they have not been questioning the authenticity of this caravan either. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think anti-Semitism could actually be a major factor in the election this year?
Oh no, it will by fucking by crook.
What
is
the
that?
ABC?
It will by force. It will by the force of the actually body politic. It doesn't matter if the Teals are like doing X, Y, and Z.
Oh,
I think
okay,
that there's
let
a
me
new
rephrase that
open.
question. The average voter, will it actually
Oh no, they won't
influence
give a shit.
ballot box? Yeah.
I don't think the average ABC enjoyer is going to enjoy seeing the ABC uncritically do this. There's a lot of flags in Sydney around the train stations, got the Palestinian flag, etc. It's a big waving for that. So then seeing the ABC is probably going to demoralize them a bit, if not just make them pissed off at the ABC.
Also, it's both something. Anti-Zionism is something that old school left-leaning people, like left-leaning boomers, and new
That's a
school
lovely cop-out.
left-leaning boomers, have it's not anti-Semitism, it's anti-Zionism, but they still have the visceral reaction when they see the Jewish community over here getting defended on the grounds of like, oh, like, they're in an innocent community and blah, blah, blah. I've seen both, young and old of the left leaning in this country say, oh, this targeting has nothing to do with the genocide that's happening. I think that any support of the Jewish community outside of actually ethnic Jewish parts of the left is going to garner fervor against them, or at least mild contempt.
Yeah, well, the next story I had here was from the ABC, where they interviewed an extremist researcher. You love that title. But the question was put very simply: why have we seen this sort of consistent, regular occurrence of anti-Semitic vandalism and so on? And the answer was very simple. The war in Gaza has been protracted. I mean, it started October 7 or, October 8 or 9, 2003. And it's basically still going. Yeah. And by the way, like anything that they've scaled back in Gaza has just been accelerated in the West Bank. It's not making the news, but they're...
Or incursions into Syria, or like further taking of the more northern parts of the Golan Heights and etc.
Yeah, I mean, further land seizures of Syria. Yeah, I mean, all this stuff that, not many people are talking about. So, some people will say, well, look, we've got a ceasefire now in the Gaza Strip. Okay, have they stopped killing people there? Have they stopped killing people in the West Bank? Have they stopped their military meddling in Syria and Lebanon? No. So this conflict is still going. All right, it didn't end with that ceasefire. And even if it did, I mean, you're talking about tens of thousands of Palestinians who are now returning to neighborhoods that in some cases have been entirely decimated. In other words, there's nothing for them to return to.
Literally demolished with explosives to destroy the buildings from the inside.
Some of the scenes really are breathtaking when you look at these like pictures of towns entirely leveled, even though we were told the whole time by the Israelis that these were targeted precision attacks only against Hamas militants. Really?
Well, I believe that precise precision attacks, just not the second part.
Right.
But yeah, the news coming in of the ceasefire, that's probably had a gigantic chilling effect on really, oh, well, conflict's over, things are getting better. You're not going to hear about the fighting in Lebanon, South Lebanon. You're not going to hear about what the fuck's happening in Syria. Everything's just cooling down now that there's a ceasefire, even though there's bloody shots being exchanged.
Wrung out.
Yeah. And even I saw on the news this morning, like in Syria, there was like the 20th car bombing in a month or something like that. So, even though they have a new regime, and apparently this meant the end of terrorist attacks, no, like things really haven't improved there either.
Syria's going to be a basket case. That was the intent. That's what's happened. And government in exile sitting in Russia for once.
God, did you see one of our old friends removed a certain flag from our profile?
Oh.
You're talking about Syrian girl?
Yeah, she removed the flag today.
Oh.
She removed the Syrian flag?
Yes, she did.
Is this like in protest of the new regime?
Well, she didn't add the news. Oh, no, they changed the Syrian flag as an icon, so she removed it. They changed the color of it.
Oh, okay.
I'll see. Now it has the green top and etc. instead of the red top.
Right. Okay, well, let's keep going with these. That's right. So about 9 months ago, the coalition, the opposition, they brought up this issue of an $87,000 research grant that was granted to a Macquarie University academic. Her name is Randa Abdel Fattah, some kind of Arab. And this was brought up because she apparently called for the end of Israel, denounced fellow academics as white supremacists, and bragged of bending research rules. So, as I said, 9 months ago, this was originally brought up by the opposition, but now the Federal Education Minister, Jason Clare, has asked the Australian Research Council to investigate this issue as a matter of priority. So now we've even got pressure coming from the Labor government to crack down on these grants that have been handed out to, well, pro-Palestinian activists or anti-Israel activists, whatever you want to call them. Now, look, it wasn't 87,000, it's 870,000. So
near on a million.
I got to press X on that though, because that's an extraordinary amount. That's nearly $1 million for a research grant. Like, what the hell is she researching? But anyway, as if that just about every bloody research grant that we give that is not in the hard sciences, and sometimes you would include the hard sciences, is
it's a hard science like sociology and psychology, those real hard sciences. Yeah, hard to fucking normalize.
Yeah, well, basically,
hard to repeat.
Any research grant given in the humanities is worthless. It's ridiculous. It's worth nothing, or it's there to push some radical leftist agenda.
It is popular though for getting into those psychology degrees, and I can understand the human mind if I get into these things. So it is popular for people wanting to get in there. Job, yeah, that basket weaving degree.
You're working either you actually do the fucking medical, you become a psychiatrist and actually do medicine, or you're working for some part of the government that is basically telling workers, they're like, oh yeah, we know that you saw your fucking workmate get crushed to death yesterday, but here's why you're internalizing grief.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, an undergrad degree in psychology is not going to get you anything.
No,
maybe you'll get you one of those shit tier
government role at a high school.
I don't even know if it'll get you that, man.
It will.
Will it? Okay. Well, to actually be a clinical psychologist, you've got to get a master's or a PhD, and the vast majority of people who go to study psychology simply do not have the mental fortitude to do that. And that's why we've got this. Women. Well, yeah, that's part of it. But it's also, as Fluoride suggested, a lot of just mentally unbalanced people who are going to do it to save themselves, help.
For example, our favorite Mr. Room Cleaner. I don't think a lot of people have the mental fortitude to do so many benzos. You have to go to Russia to get cryo treatment to come off of benzo withdrawal without dying.
Okay. Fuck. That was actually a guy who got a PhD, though.
Yes, so he did.
At least we can give him the credit there. But you see, in Australia, we have this ridiculous situation where we actually have a surplus, like an absolute oversupply of psychology students, but we also simultaneously have a shortage of clinical psychologists. That just shouldn't be. That should not exist. And the reason for that, like I said, is very easy. They don't go on to do graduate studies. They don't get a master's. They don't get a PhD, and so that psychology degree is just worthless, or almost worthless. So, they need to stop. Psychology used to be that, you had to get the same scores as someone who wanted to do engineering or medicine or something. Now it's fuck all. They should start raising the scores again.
It's like honestly, it was all the humanitarian courses and etc. They all got their standards lowered. They all got their curriculum lowered into the fucking dirt over the course of the late 70s to 90s, solely for the fact of getting women into university. Again, I think when the first time that I was on the show as a guest, I was speaking about the fact that when I was doing engineering, nursing was hyper desirable to women, etc. And the barrier to entry for women to enter engineering, which was the course that I was doing at the time, was lowered and explicitly written in documents in fucking black text on white paper, lower than than my bar to enter the course. In fact, it was so fucking low that you could be a literally sub-brick IQ woman and get into engineering. Now, granted, second semester, none of those sub-brick IQ women were in engineering. They're all in nursing.
Right.
So even then, they got chased out.
No, they used the application of engineering to get into the university. And by the way, as soon as you're in, you can change fucking course as much as you want, as long as you pay. So yeah, they got in on engineering and then they fucking transferred over to nursing, and that's that.
The old switcheroo.
And then I was just left with women who fucking smell like pennies and know exactly every single model of train manufactured forever.
Well, look, it's not just to get more women in; it's just to get more minorities in. And how do you do that?
Yes, the amount of islanders that come over to do the nursing degree, assistants in nursing, fucking ridiculous. And they chuck the old fogies around like a sack of potatoes.
Oh god, and even with current legislation regarding that equivalence, and by the way, our fears are now our speculation, Finian, and our fears are now true. Yeah, they're fully recognizing fucking Indian degrees 100% now.
We're fucked.
Oh no, I've got something on that. They still have been deregistering phony colleges and stuff. Not anywhere near as much as what they should. But yeah, we've got something on that a bit later.
How would you even check it over there in India? How would you measure it? Degree in telemarketing.
All right, so look, just last thing on the whole anti-Semitism debate. Penny Wong, I believe she's back now, but she was just in Poland. And this was for the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. So, if you read the ABC article here, it says that this was the site of 1.1 million murders by the Nazis, right? So, fun fact, originally the claim was that 4 million had died at Auschwitz. And then the number got revised down to, I believe, 1.5.
Yeah, that's what I remembered.
Now it's down to 1.1 million. And however, during all of those revisions, only ever revising the number down at Auschwitz, somehow the total number of 6 million Jewish deaths never changed.
It's an odd sort of shrinkflation.
Oh, is 6 million like a weird number that appears in Jewish history and Jewish lies throughout literally millennia?
Yeah, I think it is for the creation of 6
million Jews were burned by the Pharaoh. 6 million Jews were destroyed by the Roman Empire.
Some were stomped into dust.
Yes, they were burned, in fact, by the Egyptians, and they were, some of them in that, that walled-off fortress that they, basically, burned the food in, etc., were burned by the Romans, leaving no trace, by the way.
Look, there was a lot of trace. Every road was lined with them on crosses.
Yes, absolutely. They were just crucified all the way back to Rome with no trace, by the way, because the sun just melted everything. It's not like 6 million is a Kabbalistic number, by the way. And when I say Kabbalistic, what do you mean? I mean, literally both in the Torah and in the Talmud.
Bloody, every time I hear it, that ding from Akira goes off.
6 to the 6, by the way, that's what it is. And old counting numbers, old counting symbols, or systems, sorry, and also symbols, used to be base 6 back in the day, not base 10. So why is 6 million, six digits and 6? So it's basically the highest counting figure you can actually put together. It's an over-exaggeration in the old base 6 count.
Like in the
infinity
the imperial system, 6 always seems to come up.
Yeah. And your clock?
60 seconds.
Yeah, 60 seconds, 60 minutes. And then obviously, 24 hours, but yeah.
Okay. Add up
The
digits.
the oldest counting systems were base 6, not base 10.
Well, clocks are based on the dial, so
Yeah, well, look, at this
Sundial.
this anniversary at Auschwitz, Penny Wong was actually also there with the Attorney General, probably because he's Jewish, Mark Dreyfus. And she was there with the anti-Semitism envoy, Gillian Siegel. So remember, she was
Envoy.
given that position. That position was created after the synagogue firing, and there was also an envoy for Islamophobia that was created as well, just so Labor, were doing their balancing act. But
Did
over
he
the
go with
break, I
them?
remember. So Gillian Siegel has actually been very critical of the federal government and has been saying, hey, why did you appoint me when you're not willing to take any of my advice? And basically, she's looking for jail time for anything anti-Semitic, anything at all. All right, let's talk a bit about Australia Day. That wasn't all that long ago. Look, I don't think we need to comment too much on the scenes that happen in Adelaide and the other, like the NSN celebrations across the country.
Free my nigger Wells.
Yeah. Well, actually, maybe that's one thing we can talk about.
Yeah,
So,
no,
He's
I want my
hungry
I
for
want
freedom.
yeah. So, I mean, in Adelaide, and this just happened, by the way. Each year, the NSN do like an annual meeting in an Australian city for Australia Day, and this year it just happened to be Adelaide. That's why they were over there, if you wanted to know. But I believe there were 17 arrests made all up, including of Thomas Sewell, Joel Davis, and yes, our own Stephen Wells. And my understanding is that Stephen Wells refused to sign the bail papers because he didn't agree with the conditions on it. And that means he's been remanded in custody until a magistrate will hear his case in March. So that actually means over a month in prison or in jail for Stephen Wells.
And he's already in solitary, and they're already actually starving him on purpose. By the way,
Starving.
they gave him they gave him like in the first 3 days of his arrest, they gave him one ham sandwich.
Jesus.
Yes,
Was it kosher?
Yeah. It's ham, buddy. No,
No cheese.
no. Granted, he's being his classic self and dragging his heels and making the process the punishment for both parties.
Good on him.
But yeah, no. He's no. They no toilet paper, and solitary, and yeah, they basically just refuse. They're dragging their heels on feeding him, and he's also claiming as many dietary requirements as he possibly can.
That certainly sounds like something he would do.
Yes. Here's my strongest angloid.
So look, maybe hopefully I remember, I'll put links in the show notes about the White Australia Fund, I think they're calling it. So that's, to help the guys who are still in remand or, also just to fight the charges as well that have been leveled. And they've been really ridiculous things like refusal to stop loitering.
Yes.
I believe that's actually that's the charge that they gave to Joel Davis while he was giving an interview to Channel 7. Like they arrested him in front of the
now you're swearing, mate? No, and by the way, that was a SOG agent. That was a state security agent that came up and said, "You're Joel Davis? Yeah, you're wearing a Nazi insignia yesterday. Arrest him." That was a state security agent through and through.
That was an eagle on his belt buckle. An eagle.
No, it was the. Oh yeah, they were saying that was the eagle on his belt buckle. And they're also like one of the prosecutors for some of the other guys that bring up the EAM insignia, the 4 red arrows.
Oh man! So it's obviously what happened here. South Australia Police were just informed beforehand, probably by Premier Malinowskis himself. Hey, these guys want to march into the Adelaide CBD. I don't care what law you invoke. Just make sure they don't get there and arrest as many of them as possible. That's obviously what has happened here. So the response, after they fight all of these charges and everything, is they're going to take the South Australian police to court, sue them.
Yeah,
And they
it was a
fucking
bold
should.
strategy. It was a bold
Look,
strategy from them, just throwing charges at them.
Now, again, like a lawyer should comment, but apparently it's grey letter law that you're not allowed to use disassociation. What's it called again when it's included in
Yes.
some kind of signed agreements or bail conditions? But you're not allowed to use disassociation and bail conditions unless it's a violent crime led to gang activity, and they're all being charged with loitering. And they've all got disassociation agreements in their bail conditions.
Yeah. Yeah, and at the same time, you've got Sarah Hanson-Young calling on them to be classified as a terrorist organization.
Fuck off.
So even if you were to assume that the current charges are valid, what? You're saying that you have a terrorist organization based on loitering. Like, can she tell us what is terroristic about the NSN? What terror plots have they been involved in? Or
They're
have
just
they planned?
standing there menacingly.
All right. But look, the other story I had here was something that didn't. People were much more interested in the NSN, but Susan Ley, the deputy Liberal leader, she actually likened the founding of Australia, the First Fleet, to Elon Musk's SpaceX efforts to colonize Mars.
Well, it's a similar color.
Well, I mean, what people I think don't like about this is that it sort of promotes the idea of terra nullius, in that, well, if Mars is empty, Mars doesn't have any life on it, well, that must mean that, Australia was empty as well. And maybe it'd have life here, but it was simply flora and fauna.
Oh, God. Could we find some black fellas up on Mars?
Yeah, well, look, not quite, but there were probably, I would say, no more than 300,000 Aborigines in this country.
Yeah,
Over
first
God
claims
I'd go
of 70
less.
million.
Oh, yeah, it's probably
dude,
less.
fucking-
That's why I say no more than 300,000.
Yeah, no, like, trust me, like, activists, anthropologists, like X, Y, and Z, like, literally, like, go to a Chinese or like fucking like any anthropologist or anthropologist association in Asia, and they'll say like, oh yeah, based on these records and based on these, hunting densities and based on like actual like written encounters from like colonists and like the again, they said the Chinese will say like, oh, we had like advanced trade with them. The Indonesians had like a bit more trade from the Torres Strait Islands and etc. And they'll say like, oh yeah, about like 30 to 45,000.
Yeah. Well, I watched a little bit of the interview with Tom and Blair on Sam Newman's show. I don't know if you guys have caught that.
Oh God, yeah.
But Sam Newman claimed 160,000 Aborigines were here. That was his number.
Is that because they had aquaculture and shit?
I don't know.
I mean,
say that.
The problem is you go up to like the north of Queensland and you get like the semi-functionals who are like half Polynesian.
Mm.
And then
tropics.
Yeah, you get the ones that no, like in like the north of Queensland, not Tasmania. I mean, like functionally there was none in Tasmania.
There was 2,000.
Yeah,
we're pretty certain of that. There was 2,000, and they were teetering on the edge of just being wiped out completely.
So the Noongar, as reported by Governor Irwin of the Swan River Colony, there was about 8,000 Noongar, 8 to 10, depending. But yeah, again,
the numbers.
Again, like they were all around the Swan River, and they actually asked. Well, that's an aside, but yeah, the natives asked the people of the Swan River Colony to help them genocide another small tribe that had been preying on them immediately.
Oh my god, it's just like Africa.
Mm.
Okay, all right. Let's move on to the next topic, which is religious freedom. Now, the New South Wales Transport Minister Joe Halen, the office there was vandalised. So I think there were three bits of graffiti on the office. One of them simply said anti-Semite. Another said, "Honor your oath, separate church and state." But then the main one, which was written right in the front, was, "Demanding religious freedom is not divisive or criminal. It's a duty. God, duty, country." So they did arrest someone over this, and it was a 51-year-old man. Dare I say he is a bit too old to be writing graffiti on an MP's house. So, nonetheless, that's what he's done. Obviously frustrated with lack of progress on religious
You're
freedom.
51 years old. You could have like an late teens, early 20-year-old who is just as rebellious to do that. Come on, man.
Yeah, still it's a bit strange. Okay, now, George Pell, speaking of religious figures, obviously he has passed away, but we've just gotten information that there was a conclusion of the government's national redress scheme. So this is for abuse victims of the Catholic Church. Now, they have found, I should first just say that this is much like a civil case where they make conclusions based on the balance of probabilities, not on proof beyond reasonable doubt. So obviously there is a much lower standard of evidence that they demand.
That's one way of getting around the law.
Yeah, definitely. So this decision was made prior to George Pell's death, but it's just been kept secret up until now. But the Australian newspaper has managed to get this information, and it has found that two separate payments have been given to two men who were boys at the time, 8 and 9 at the time. Now, both of these incidents, well, let me just name what they are. So the first one is to do with groping of genitals, and this supposedly was when George Pell was in a swimming pool with other boys under his supervision, and he would do things like just throw them into the air. It was just horseplay in the swimming pool, as adults often do with kids, like throw them into the air, launch them into the air so they fall back into the water. Apparently, he was using that as an excuse to grope the boys. And that's what one of these guys has received compensation for. Now, the other one, this is the one that's even more ridiculous. This is the boy who said that he stole an item of clothing of George Pell and ran off with it. George Pell chased him, caught him, and then as punishment for stealing the item of clothing, anally raped him.
Oh.
Now, yeah, which is what you do, isn't it? Now, very important to point out here, as the ABC did not in this article, neither of these cases even went to court when the criminal charges were brought against George Pell. The reason why is because the prosecutor came to the conclusion that the evidence was so scanty on both of these accounts that neither of them had a chance of holding up in court, so they were just dropped. However, they've taken them to the National Redress Scheme, and both have been found to be true, and the two men have received compensation. I don't think there's any information on how much money they've received, but the money that was given to them approximately 3 weeks before George Pell's death.
Was the amount of money released to the press?
No, not until... No. When I read this article, no.
And
maybe
where
we'll
exactly is the
find
money
out
coming
much.
from?
It's from the government. It's a compensation scheme from the federal government. Yeah, it's
Or I
bullshit.
guess accusations can get you a lot of money then, if it's against the right people.
Yeah. Now, Andrew Bold appeared on Sky News to talk about this, and he made the further point that the judgment made reference to the victim's demeanor. In terms of actually testing the evidence that they gave to see if it was plausible that these incidents happened, that didn't happen. It was simply just based on taking their word for it and saying that they had a believable demeanor in how they described the acts.
Yeah, seems legit.
Now, anyone, right, and anyone will tell you, that is not how a court is supposed to operate. It's supposed to actually test the evidence independent of whatever the witness's demeanor is. And that didn't happen here. All right. Let's talk about the issue of hormone therapy and puberty blockers.
Oh boy.
So,
Lord
which is
have
always
mercy.
fun. All right. Now, this latest chapter on this topic started in Queensland by the state government. Now, the Crisafulli government, new LNP government, announced a statewide freeze on hormone therapy and prescriptions of puberty blockers for anyone that is aged under 18. And the reason why was because there was a whistleblower who made a complaint to Queensland Health in 2004. And in that complaint, it was revealed that one of the people on hormone therapy was only 12 years old. I got to say, I'm surprised there wasn't anyone lower than that. Especially when you look at some of the cases in America, where it's really ridiculous how young some of these kids are. Anyway, at the same time as announcing that freeze, the Queensland government announced an investigation into the whole practice of it. So it looks like we might actually have some common sense governing happening here from the LNP. Now, this put pressure on the federal government because Pauline Hanson and some other Australian senators have actually been pushing the federal government for years to have a national inquiry into the whole practice of hormone therapy, puberty blockers, etc. So the government has actually announced that now. Now, don't get too excited because a lot of people are saying, well, this is actually basically an attempt of the federal government to overshadow what they're doing in Queensland. And there's definitely evidence of that because the federal government is now telling the Queensland government, do you mind stopping your investigation? There's a federal investigation happening now. So you guys at the state level, you don't need to worry about yours anymore. Okay? We'll finish ours. And when we do that, you can then take away the freeze on hormone therapy. So, I saw Pauline Hanson on Sky News talking about how this was a big victory. I think she was counting her chickens before they hatch here. This may simply be the federal government trying to seize the narrative from state Queensland government and just kind of pushing out a shoddy report that will say that there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, this is the new normal of what we do.
Yeah, and also a lot of the time they'll say, oh, well, look, don't worry about a 12-year-old going on it because that's actually the ideal age. Maybe that's even a bit too late because some 12-year-olds have gone through puberty already. And you need to have the hormone therapy and the puberty blockers before puberty so that the transition can be more effective.
Okay, so the entire transgender industry, again, like the transgender industrial complex, which unfortunately came out, a bit too long ago, needs to be updated because it's way worse now. You're saying it was a $9 billion industry. Right now, it's a 20 or 21 billion US dollar industry. And that comes from, Business Wire and the Shuttle Institute for Investigation Global Hormone Replacement Therapy Market Forecast 2024 to 2023 industry trends, growth, impact of inflation, and top companies analysis. One of their abstracts includes that the market of the year 2023, so obviously 2 years ago at this point, was $21 billion, with Australia sharing a share of 3% of that alone.
So it's big.
It's big. It's
But
bigger than paracetamol.
You know what I like about that, though? To look on the bright side of this, that means that there's a huge amount of money for people who are suing doctors to get, because a hell of a lot of these people who have gone through these surgeries or these therapies or whatever the hell, they got it when they were a kid, when they were under 18. And then when they were over 18, they realized that this had basically ruined their lives. And they joined class action lawsuits against the doctors who imposed it on them. So, and we're seeing that now. Not really in Australia, but in America, those cases have started where they're suing these doctors.
Well, seeing is believing. I think those cases are going to be hushed up, kind of like you would be on Reddit. Those cases are hushed up. You're told to shut up, and you won't see them in the news. Okay, a bunch of people get basically the compensation for horrible things being done to their bodies. More people just advertised into it. So what if a few people get their money back? The damage is done.
I don't think we'll see the concept of transgenderism past 2028.
Yeah?
I don't think so.
Is it
going
to take a stop for a while and then get back into it?
I think the lawsuits will actually spook at least the pharmaceutical powers that be if they're not supplying this kind of shit. And honestly, what is transgenderism? It's the same psychological profile as a fucking flasher.
A fad?
A flasher, it's like I'm exposing my sexuality to the entire world. I get a kick out of being fucking weird and fucked up and exposing it to other people or enforcing it on other people.
Yeah, enforcing you to accept it.
Yes.
So there'll be other things into the future that they'll be doing this with.
Look, I mean, we're in the West. We're in a state of perpetual revolution so long as our masters that are our masters. But I don't think they will take this any longer. I think this has been a rather dysfunctional episode. I think they'll find a new, mutant goblin underclass to deal with in the near future.
I hope you're right.
Horrors beyond your imagination, as Nicholas Tesla wrote down.
All right. Look, just last thing on that. So far, David Crucifulli said that he's going to ignore the request from the federal government to pause his investigation. So he's pushing ahead with that. And yeah, I say good on him for doing that. I just hope that this investigation is as objective as possible, because we all know the type of stakeholders that get involved, the type of people who make submissions to investigations like this. Fair to say that NGOs of the left have a hell of a lot more sway and funding than others. So that.
But I would like to say that whistleblower, it's good to see people aren't just getting out of the system and escaping and all that. People who care are sitting there, monitoring and reporting when they see abuses.
Oh, by the way, two secular guys and one religious man. It's like a joke.
We all walk into a bar. We should have seen it coming.
Okay, well, I mean, we're agreeing on everything so far. Next topic is immigration. I'm sure we're going to agree here. Um, so, Peter Dutton wants to bring back the what's known as the $5 million golden ticket visa. So,
Oh, sweet.
this is for wealthy investors who quite literally pay about that much money, $5 million for the application fee, but you're also expected to make significant investment in Australia when you get here.
Right, that
Now,
big ass casino isn't going to pay for itself in
right.
Darling Harbour.
So, about a year ago, I think this visa class was actually abolished by the Albanese government. And believe it or not, this came after revelations by the Australian newspaper that foreign criminals and corrupt regime officials, that mainly from China, were using it to acquire Australian citizenship. Now, just remember this: if you're like caught, um, like having perpetrated serious white collar crime in China, you know what they do with you? They fucking kill you. Either that, or they just take everything away from you and throw you in jail for life. They don't fuck around when it comes to corporate crime in China.
What do we
So,
do to our ones who do that?
well, well, their ones come over here, or at least they did, by purchasing these visas. And you know what these visas were called? You know how like we have like four? It's always three digits: 482, a 500 visa, a 600 visa.
Oh, I think I remember you talking about it yonks ago. It was some lucky number, wasn't it?
Yes, it's a lucky number 888. That is to signify triple good luck in Chinese numerology.
Where's your sixes now, Nosy?
Dude, fucking, I think it's like 3 and 13 that they don't fucking like.
Right. So this actually resulted in over 7,000 high net worth Chinese citizens and family members granted these visas over the years. And one of the conditions of the visas is not to be able to speak English. What a surprise. Now, there was a fundraiser in Sydney a few days ago where Peter Dutton was there and he took questions. And a migration agent in the crowd asked him if he had any plans of bringing this visa back. And he said, yes, there is. Now, I wonder why a migration agent would be asking that kind of question. If you're involved in this sector, in in the law of migration, and you're actually helping clients get a visa like this, you are set to make an absolute killing. Absolute killing. So, uh, I mean, look, this is one example of where we're actually demonstrating that Labor is better than the coalition. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that Labor on the whole is better than the coalition. I'm basically saying that they're as bad as each other. Okay. And this is just one example of that. Opposing student caps is another. Uh, Peter Dutton saying that he's actually going to do nothing to curb net migration into Australia is another. Don't look at them as some kind of, least of two evils. They're really not. They're really just as evil as each other.
But they're the same?
Basically, yes.
I have a
For
fun
all
little-
intents and purposes, these fucking faggots are the same.
I have a fun little saying. I have a fun little saying that when when liberals get in, they use their clout to stuff over their small business routines. When Labor get in, they use their clout to stuff over the worker, just because who else are you going to vote for?
Yeah. Who deregistered the Builders Labourers Foundation Federation? The Hawke government. Who put the CFMEU into administration? The Albanese government. But who took away our guns? The Howard government. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be small business or whatever, But traditional constituents of the Liberal National Party end up getting screwed as well on things like gun control.
And who are they going to vote for? The people who are directly against their interests?
That's right, because they know they're not going to lose a voting bloc that way. So, yeah, very often, you expect what you expect the very opposite of in a government you're actually going to get. Okay, now, talking about those Indian degrees that we're going to be recognizing. So, a senior employee at a deregistered international college that is run by the multimillionaire entrepreneur Rupinder Brar contacted Victorian ALP figures 4 months ago, seeking to help save the business and to raise concerns about the Albanese government's plans to cap foreign student members. So this is the Berkeley International College. This is basically like a TAFE, a technical college that would give out qualifications like Cert 4s, diplomas, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. They were recently deregistered and therefore, could not be named as a sponsor or whatever when you get a student visa. And the reason why was because of significant non-compliance. Basically, their education standards are shit, and you do not get a quality qualification from them. They're not like an entirely a fake one of these ones where you just kind of pay money and then you get your bit of paper. They did offer real courses, but they were really, really shit, low quality courses.
Well, it's like the University of New Delhi Tech, where I would be an engineer 3 times over. Oh, Calcutta Tech, where I would be an engineer 6 times over.
Right. So look, there was also a dinner that had high-profile Labor figures so this includes Anthony Albanese and the former Victoria Premier Daniel Andrews, but it also had prominent Indian businessmen there. And there's actually video footage of it that has leaked. Now, so far, it doesn't look like there's going to be any any reversal of this decision. It's going to stay. But the thing is, though, Anthony Albanese has been refusing to answer questions on whether or not he's been meeting with these Indian millionaires the whole time. Now we know he has, and now we know that the Victorian government has as well. So there's obviously a lot of cooperation going on behind the scenes to basically allow as many visas as possible to go to these foreign Indian students. And like you said before, we're recognizing more and more of their qualifications as well, even though they're worth nothing.
And again, we've elaborated on the actual knock-on results of this, and well, again, our dark speculations, Vinian, have become reality.
Right. Okay, let's move on to the very exciting topic of trade. Now, this comes up, you might have guessed, because of the tariffs that Trump has been imposing on various countries. So China, Canada, Mexico, and then making, empty threats of actually annexing Greenland and stuff like that. So look, this had immediate effects for Australia. When these tariffs were announced, that actually wiped $50 billion off the Australian stock exchange and sent the dollar to a 5-year low against the American greenback. Now, as far as we know at the moment, Trump does not have plans to slap any new tariffs on Australia. We are not part of this so-called trade war. But he's also got no plans of lifting any of these other tariffs either, meaning that this may have continued spillover effects on the Australian economy.
He's sending waves.
Yeah. Again, I think I disagree with like the libertarian take on tariffs. Like, oh, all tariffs lead to war, all tariffs lead to deficit, or all tariffs lead to like a continued trade war and etc. I believe that some tariffs, at least, and I believe that I think we all know that America is a big fucking country that can produce its own stuff internally quite easily. Will lead to industry development, but the president is only around for a 4-year term, and how long will these tariffs last?
Yeah, they're done by executive order, aren't they?
Yes.
Well, what happened to his other executive orders?
Yeah, but also
The
like,
judicial.
if you follow recent American trends, Trump's only going to serve for one term. When you have political polarization, which is happening in Australia as well, governments tend to only serve one term. So they just take turns, one term each. And from that, you could assume that the Democrats are then going to abolish these tariffs, or at least alleviate them. So yeah, they may not be in for very long at all.
I think America needs to. Well, no, I'm not America itself. I think the American citizenry needs to understand the political reality of both Canada and Mexico, where they're not really like one giant country. They're more so one giant governed city. And then in Canada's case, it's more like, the capital and Alberta and fucking Quebec, which is a whole bunch of weird French people over in the Northeast. But yeah, like they're just one giant city. That's their entire economic block. I don't know what the point of tariffs on that would be outside of like squeezing something out of a Jewish owner of literally Mexico City, because that's what the Mexican government owns. Mexico City, not the entire fucking country.
All right. Now, the last story we had on trade was that Labor doesn't seem to be making good on a promise that would require hospitality venues to say the origin of the fish on their menus. Yes, this was a promise.
Oh, shit.
So the fishing industry had been pushing for them to say whether or not the fish on the menu was Australian, because believe it or not, some people do actually make choices based on information like that. So that was supposed to be the Minister for Industry, Ed Husick. He was set to make that decision. But I mean, what does that say about how we treat our own industries here? I mean, forget about tariffs on competing industries. This is actually simply just a requirement saying, hey, can you say if this is Australian made or not? And they won't even do that as a way of promoting an Australian industry. So any hope of us actually imposing tariffs on industries like this is just fanciful. It's not going to happen.
It's such a good idea. Basically saying, yeah, this thing's from Queensland. I guess in environmental way, you can say, oh, I travelled from across half the country to get here, or the sea on the other side of it. But yeah, even then, where it's processed, it's probably exported to Vietnam, processed, and then exported back here. Anyway,
again, we could always talk about the can of peaches. Picked in the US, packaged in Indonesia, sold in the US.
Right. Yeah. Peaches come from a can. They were put there by a man.
I'm going to eat me a lot of peaches.
Peaches for me.
Okay. So I think this is the first time I have ever written this term into the prep, and that is DEI. So, of course, this is an American term, diversity, equity, and inclusion, or equidity, as Nolsey likes to pronounce it.
I think the I and the E are in the wrong place there.
Is it?
Yeah, it's supposed to be DIE.
Is it? Oh, okay. Jeez,
Uh,
I don't know. I haven't been following it as much as I should.
all good, mate.
But look, Peter Dutton, I don't know if this is just part of a general attempt to mimic Trump, like mimic the aesthetics and the slogans and the rhetoric. But he has talked about federal public service, so our Australian public servants and their commitment to culture, diversity, and inclusion, saying that such advisors to the bureaucracy do nothing to improve the lives of everyday Australians. Right. So, talking about things like a race discrimination commissioner or a gender equality commissioner. I might go even so far as to say, like an e-safety commissioner. What in God's name do we actually need? All of these bureaucrats who are on, at least 200K a year. And like, what do they actually do?
Chop some
Like, why?
mates.
I think they're basically paid. I mean, in the case of the race discrimination commissioner, anyway, is basically just come up with ways of how white people are evil. That's
Ah,
it.
so they're a commissariat class to watch over the
Okay,
shoulder
how
of
about
every
this?
person.
How about some Dr. Seuss's? And it's like red Jew, blue Jew, gold Jew, new Jew. This concept shouldn't be new to you two. Again, they're there to fuck with you two.
Hmm.
Again,
Oh.
they're there to fuck with us, man.
Oh, by the way, it is DEI. It's not DIE.
I disagree,
That's the equity and
but I'll
I
take
mean,
you for it.
equity inclusion. You could also put inclusion first and put equity second. But again, like it
Are
doesn't
you, are
matter.
you making a joke on the fact
Oh,
that
I'm making a hilarious joke. I'm laughing my
well,
ass off, but I'm retarded.
I don't know obviously, we're referring to the helicopter crash here. I mean, I have not read into
Uh,
this. Do you guys think it was actually like DEI policies that
Okay,
yeah.
so
contributed to this?
we've got a little birdie, both Fluoride and I, and we won't say the source, but it was in that case.
It was.
Yes.
Okay. Look, wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I can talk about Australian examples of this when women go to join, like the police, or if they want to be a prison officer, a youth custodial officer, stuff like that. When it comes to the physical standards, like the level that you have to pass on the beep test, or how many push ups you have to do, something like that, basically all of that stuff is cut in half compared to what men have to do. And I mean, how often, like, I just saw this fucking scrawny girl, like half my size, the other day walking around as a cop in the city. And I'm just looking at this girl and I'm like, how in God's name could you, like, subdue a criminal? How the hell could you do it? So, yeah, in some cases, it's definitely fair to say that diversity, equity, inclusion kills people because of incompetence. Um,
Mm.
you are
I got a
you are
good
risking
friend who
lives.
I got a good friend who came really close to dying from that. I can split his skull open.
Well, didn't it happen to Ranbot as well?
Yeah, that's my good friend.
Oh, that's what you're talking about.
Now we have to take his stories with a grain of salt, especially after the recent wet brainism.
Well, yeah. Look, I'm not
A
caught
squirt
up.
of lemon.
We're not gonna cut that. We're gonna pass over this. Like the Jewish ghost of genocide, we're gonna pass over this conversation.
But yeah, um, I kind of for my walking around, looking at like the lollipop men who turned a sign to say stop and go or watch the entrance to job sites. That's usually take it easy kind of work. You know, it's been a long couple of weeks. Put you on the lollipop
Traffic
guy.
control.
If you got the girls doing that all day, then the blokes have no fucking relief. They're going to be
Oh, yeah,
jackhammering every day, all day, and
dude,
yep, no easy jobs anymore.
traffic control is now female dominated.
Yep.
It is with the
Yeah.
pink high vis.
Yes, it is.
Well,
That's
technically,
been
pink is the most appropriate color for being high vis. You're never not going to see it.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So if you run down a
That's
pink, you
what-
go in a clink.
Look, Peter Dutton gave examples of the kind of public service positions that he's talking about. So they include culture, diversity, and inclusion advisors, change managers, and internal communication specialists. He says such positions, as I say, do nothing to improve the lives of everyday Australians. They're certainly not frontline service delivery roles that can make a difference to people's lives. Yeah, I think he's absolutely right. And I think it's a shame that he had to take a cue from Donald Trump to say it.
Well, following those waves, I mean, can you say it beforehand? Could you say it with Biden in their kind of left-leaning government in? Nope. But well, fucking when Rome is run by a right-leaner, you lean right.
Yeah, well, I mean, the fact that not only Trump won the election, but he won the popular vote, which is actually like a rare thing for the Republicans to do. But also, we're going to get onto some Aboriginal news in a sec. And we can see that from the result of the referendum on the Aboriginal voice, the Liberal government is also taking a cue there. They realise how unpopular all this Aboriginal stuff is. So therefore, they're signalling very mildly against it. But they can never actually take a leadership role on any of these ideas. They have to wait until they're absolutely certain that they've got enough support behind them before they announce anything, you know?
Didn't stop them from trying to do the treaty.
No, and like, can we all please remember this? Dutton said that if the no vote prevailed in the referendum, that he would have another referendum under his government. That was a Peter Dutton promise that I must remind everyone of. Since then, obviously, that promise has been dropped. Like, who in God's name would have another referendum now? But at the time, that was something he promised.
Come on, do it again. Do another one then. I want to see it. I'm sure people will be thrilled to do it again.
Oh, God. Yeah, and I mean, that time, the no vote would win by an even larger margin, I would say.
Do it a third time. I want it run into the ground.
Okay, so let's move on to the economy. We're going to start with housing. And spoiler alert, this is all bad news. So the number of people experiencing long-term homelessness has actually risen over 25% in the last year. So it shows 37,779 people experienced persistent homelessness in 2023 to 24. The figure is an increase of 26.3% from 30,306 people who experienced it from 2019 to 2020. So people who are homeless for more than 7 months in a 2-year period are defined as experiencing persistent homelessness, with more than 1 in 5 people who seek support services falling under the category. Okay, yeah, none of this surprises me. Homelessness is going up. And yeah, you know, it's not necessarily like the bum you see in the city centre. You know, they're always going to be homeless. We're talking about people who do things like, you know, couch surfing or sleeping in their cars, that kind of stuff.
But we ain't talking about your turn of the 20th century fucking homeless. We're talking about your turn of the 20th century. We're talking about your turn of the 20th century homeless. The middle class or the lower middle class now.
Oh.
Yeah, you're talking about actually functional people, okay? Not dysfunctional people who live off coins and the soup kitchen and whatever, you know.
Basically, you could
Don't-
consider that to be anybody who went back to live with their parents, because fuck paying $400 a week.
Yeah, a lot of people do that. It's not uncommon now for like people in their 30s or even their 40s to go back and live with their parents for a bit because of the cost of living, or to save up for a deposit on a house or something. You know, a lot of people are doing it now.
Yeah, good luck with that.
No, IR.
All right,
We're back.
off to IR.
Sorry, we paused there briefly, people, just so I could get a refill of my beer. Okay, so next topic is on industrial relations. So, Labor's Secure Jobs Better Pay legislation, this passed, I believe, early 2024, including things like collective bargaining. So this was supposed to actually reverse the trend away from collective bargaining. And by that can simply just be an enterprise bargaining agreement. It doesn't have to be what's referred to as pattern bargaining or multi-employer bargaining. Anyway, 409-page draft report was released, and it found that basically they can't make any sweeping conclusions yet because these laws were only... Oh, well, there we go. Sorry, they came in at the end of 2023, but some of the provisions actually did not start until well after that. So we can't make any sweeping conclusions, but the review did say that the early signs are positive, that collective bargaining was increasing, and especially the coverage of collective agreements and wages, believe it or not, had started to improve. Okay, I'd like to see, like, by how much. Those numbers aren't here. I'd be particularly interested to see how much wages have gone up, because mine certainly haven't gone up, and everyone around me, none of their wages have gone up either. And even if they have, they're certainly not going up with the cost of living and rental prices and mortgage repayments, etc. So, if these laws by Labor have actually made a difference to the working class, I think they're minimal at most. Okay, so last story on the economy was on superannuation. Now, we may remember that Labor set a goal of having superannuation contributions, employer contributions, at 15% of your wage. Labor has reminded us that this was simply an aspirational target, and now I guess we know it was only aspirational because they've scrapped it. So the coalition government back under John Howard, they actually froze superannuation contributions at 9.5%. The previous program, it was implemented by Paul Keating, and it was supposed to kind of go up every few years. The Howard government froze it, and it basically stayed there for, about 15 years or so. But then, guess what? Under ScoMo, or maybe it was Malcolm Turnbull, it went to 10%. Coalition actually moved it 0.5%. Now, Labor actually started indexing it again, and it was due to go... Oh, sorry, it will. This is still going to happen. It will actually rise to 12% by the new financial year, 2025. So there you go. You get that tiny little amount.
How much was it supposed to raise if he didn't pause it at 9.5%?
Yeah, I was trying to think of that. I'm not sure. I know something I do know is that the 12% number was supposed to come in like years ago, like 2000 or something. Like,
fuck.
Yeah, a long, long time ago. And Paul Keating has basically said that, the superannuation system is not going to achieve its goals. I mean, primarily the goal was to abolish the pension, except for, people who had no super, I guess. But no, because of this, and also because of the fact that people who people were allowed to access their super during COVID. Do you remember that? You were allowed
Yeah.
to actually make, I think it was up to $20,000 out of your super.
Look, and also like even Modi's visit to this country, like basically showed that there are Australian citizens who would just work in cash, who have zero fucking like actually announce or like taxable income because they're Infinity Indians, and they're not taxed and etc. And Modi even showed an app and a form you could fill out with the ATO, showing how you could make remittances back to India without being taxed by the Australian government, even as an Australian citizen.
Well, would like to say it's not only Indians. I've seen white fellas who only have worked in cash through my years.
Well, yes. Well, that's a
You're
tale as
always
old
gonna
as
have
time.
some of
Or
that.
robbery is, as contemporary is.
So we'll always need that pension for the poor buggers when they retire, broken to pieces, working in those sort of industries.
Yeah, but look, I reckon like after we get this increase to 12% come July, Labor will freeze it again. There's
Why?
too much, but they will. We can pretty much be
It's supposed to be
guaranteed
the
of that.
opposite of what they're doing.
Okay, now let's talk about Aborigines. So I alluded to this earlier. The current Indigenous Affairs Minister, how could we forget, is Jacinta Price. And by the way, she is also going to be, should the government, the coalition, be elected to government in the next election, she would also be in charge of a Bureau of Government Efficiency. You guys hear about this? So you know how Elon Musk is heading that department in America?
You had the meme.
Yeah. So this is another way of Dutton doing a Trumpism. He's going to create this, and he's going to put an Aboriginal. That's right, an Aboriginal in charge of government efficiency.
The lines write themselves.
Now I gotta ask here. By the way, I know people are going to say this is maybe my libertarian priors coming out or whatever, but isn't government efficiency is obviously supposed to be about making government smaller and spending smaller? Why would you then create a new department, a new level of bureaucracy with new bureaucrats to actually shrink the size of government? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Why do you throw a piranha into a tank of fucking beta fish?
No, but seriously, I mean, I don't hear like anyone like using that logic at all. Like, I just don't get it.
Well,
I mean, like,
to cut the fat from things, to actually find where there is fat, and there is a point where you get so big you need to be able to find that fat, otherwise it grows cancerous. I think that's kind of the ideal idea that ain't gonna happen.
again, like the Inquisition, as it originally was meant to find like churches that were basically turning themselves into small corporations and cut them off from the church. It was only Jews in Spain that got really pissed off because all these inquisitors were quite literally finding out that they were literally like funding, Judaism in Spain. That's why everyone knows about the Spanish Inquisition. Or as like a terrible, terrible investigative agent.
Well, look, here's actually one of the ways that Jacinta Price is proposing to limit government spending. And I think this is one we'll all agree on. And that is the money that is put into funding the Indigenous Welcome to Country and the ceremonies that go along with it.
Weren't we promised that if we didn't vote no, we wouldn't get a promise this country?
Well, look, this is like what I was saying before about how the no vote was so emphatic. Like even the coalition was surprised by how big the no vote was. This was for the first time ever. You actually had real conversation about abolishing the Welcome to Country, or abolishing, all this other stuff where you have to, you always have to recognize the elders past and present and all that shit. Like it's like every speech nowadays has to begin with something like that. But there is a lot of money that goes into like funding the ceremonies and all the bloody placards and advertising and everything that they roll out in various government departments and that as well. You add it all up, it does cost a lot of money. And so she actually mentioned the result of The Voice. And it said that gave the message that Australians want to see taxpayer dollars work more effectively for them. In other words, they don't want it spent on all of this meaningless symbolic Aboriginal shite that only serves as a guilt trip the whole time. Now, at the same time, she did talk about diverting those funds into programs that she thinks would actually deliver positive outcomes for Aborigines. But, they include things like more work for the dole and things like that, which isn't really going to help either. But anyway, it's a start. I mean, if we could just scale back and all this fucking welcome to country, acknowledgement of country crap that goes on, it will be quite a relief, I got to say.
I think both parties find it kind of sacred, so I'm not sure that either would really want to pull back, maybe just stagnate for a while.
We can only hope. Dude, like, I don't know, like, year by year, like, the more Indian, the more Asian this fucking country becomes, unfortunately, the less relevant Aboriginals become. If 2002, if you fucking, like, put The Voice back to 2002, I think it would have actually gone through.
Yeah, there was enough hippies. There was enough hippies around, they would have voted it.
Aboriginals not considered a threat. Like, the loss of country not considered a threat. The Voice would have gone through.
Maybe. Okay. The last story I had here was about Parks Victoria, how they banned rock climbing. So this was a very popular destination for like middle-class white people, like doctors, engineers, etc. So anyway, the exact reasons for this, departmental documents have been released showing that this was done because the Aboriginal elders, or the traditional owners of these rocks, believed it was a form of colonization. That's right.
Oh, God.
Even though it was already under their stewardship, their ownership, and they were allowed to charge money for it, they just decided, no, we don't even want that, because that is a form of colonization. Right. I don't know what
don't get paid, I guess. But
that's what I've
said. Or no, yeah, Mount Warning, here in New South Wales, or is it up north? It's close to the border anyway, with Queensland. Mount Warning, went there pretty recently, just to drive up the road, pretty raggedy, but they have a whole bunch of cameras sitting there looking at the entrance to where you can actually start climbing up the track, with all the signs in the world saying, yeah, you're not allowed to go any further. So, really secure camera ready to photograph you if you attempt to pass by this thing and go up this lovely mountain track that was built yonks ago. Had all the infrastructure to get a road up there to get you a lovely thing, and then wham, no longer allowed to use it. Imagine one day they're just got to reopen it again.
Actually, again, like locally, there's an Aboriginal corporation looking to take over the entirety of Ledge Point, which, not a lot of people might know this about Ledge Point in Western Australia, but it's the holiday home of multi-millionaires, hardcore industrial business owners. Hell, even Twiggy has a small little place up there. But it turns out that golf course is now owned by Aboriginals. And they're charging them a percentage of their income Not their known income, the income from their house as a rental.
Ooh.
Yes. So I've heard stuff from, well, my cousins, my boss about that. But yeah, trust me, like I don't think this Aboriginal corporation concept will continue too much longer. In fact, I've had some conversations with a certain like metal group, and I think I don't think Aboriginal corporations are too long for this earth.
Good. Sooner the better.
Oh, trust me, they'll be replaced with so much worse other things, Finian.
Oh, God. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. So turning to the very much related issue of crime. So Peter Dutton has declared that enough is enough in Alice Springs. And he basically has said yes to a program by the Chief Minister in the Northern Territory for Nokiari. And this is basically because, look, the Northern Territory government has to run its policing in conjunction with the federal government. They simply don't have the resources, the money to do it themselves. So they make a bunch of demands on the federal government to help them out with policing, particularly in these remote Aboriginal areas. And so far, they're saying that the current government has been ignoring them. Peter Dutton is saying that he wants to go with the full program that the Country Liberal Party is proposing in the Northern Territory. So that would include Centrelink payments being moved to takeaway alcohol-free days. It would make payments contingent on reporting fortnightly to work and training programs. It'd include a federal audit of Indigenous support programs.
I mean, you can't see it any other way. You can't spin that any other way than yeah.
Yeah, this wouldn't be about Aborigines, would it? Yeah, I mean, everything that he lays out there is obviously to do with typical Aboriginal behaviour and how you can curb it. I mean, there's no need to make Centrelink payments on like takeaway alcohol-free days in other areas of the country. It's just not necessary.
Another one.
No. Or doing things like tying Centrelink benefits to school attendance is another thing that they do.
I know that they do that with driver's license. If you don't send your kids to school, they'll nick your driver's license and won't let you drive around and about until your kids get to bloody school again. That's a common one everywhere, I think.
Yeah, but they actually tie your Centrelink payments to that in the Northern Territory.
Basically your income.
Yeah. And I mean, the cashless welfare card. Who could that possibly be directed towards?
I mean, the guys tossing chunks of concrete at that one pub last year.
Well, if the concrete's got strong enough windows, if it didn't, then their fault, right? Like in the olden days of throwing stones.
Like it's a pub and the fucking NT, of course, it's like steel wire reinforced laminated glass.
See,
And if there were a chunk of concrete at it, and it just fucking it cracks the first layer and then bends in a bit, and that's it. Still terrifying though. Imagine being swarmed by a whole bunch of savages.
like the Battle of Rorke's Drift.
Okay, now, one of the programs that is in effect in the Northern Territory at the moment, these are new public drinking laws. So they came into force in November. It outlaws people consuming alcohol in a prohibited public place and engaging in conduct causing a nuisance to other people. Mm-hmm. So We've had 120 people across the territory have been fined. You get $197
Nagama,
fine for that. That's as of
Nagama,
January.
you're gonna destroy Aboriginal culture. You're gonna destroy
So that
Aboriginal
is
culture right here.
more than $23,000 worth of fines. How much of that do you think will actually get paid?
23,000 stolen donation. Stolen gender.
Never forget it.
You can't mean to suggest that most of those fines would be handed out to Aboriginal people, would you?
No, I can't do that. Can't do that.
Well, technically,
Right
it'll
now.
be handed out to the government.
It'll be handed out to the local Centrelink Centre, if at all.
It's just double handling of tax dollars.
In a bloody Mad Max scenario, the Centrelink office will survive.
I swear.
Okay, let's go on to climate and energy. Quite a few stories here, as we often do. How about this? The ABC is bragging about these new records that have been broken for renewables. So, get this, guys. On the 6th of November last year, renewables provided 3/4 of all the power in the grid for a half an hour. And that was the first time ever it did that. Okay, let me repeat. 3/4 of all power in the grid for a half an hour.
Do you see the
That
ads
is
by I was gonna say did you see the ads by like a sustainable future Australia where they got like the 3 actors and it's like a guy sustainable energy sustainable energy Australia, and they put these ads out on YouTube and there's one guy, he just looks like this clean cut electrician and he's meant to represent renewables, and there's a dude with he's like wearing this like old,
The coal man.
Yeah, the coal man. The coal man, and he's got like black lung and he's coughing up, he sounds like a smoker and etc. And then there's like the nuclear man, and he's wearing this hazmat suit and he's like dropping shit around the place.
I love that character from Captain Planet.
Yeah, these are ads being played on the Australian YouTube right now, and they've been set to target all ages and all states of Australia, and they've been funded by like this one political NGO based out of France. I can't track them any further, but
fucking France. Is this their revenge on us for those nuclear submarines?
No, it's because France doesn't give a shit who you fund an NGO from.
Oh my god.
Yep. Anyway, so the ad, he's got these 3 actors, and the coal guy is coughing up a lung, saying like, "Oh, I'm going out of time," and he's labeled coal and gas. So like, "Oh, I'm running out of time. I'm sick and I'm dead," and blah blah blah, and no one can save me. And then like the green renewable guy with the solar and wind says like I can replace you in a little bit. I just need funding. And then the nuclear guy shows up and is like, I'm good too. I'm literally just as reliable. A lot of people say that I'm just as reliable as the coal guy, but I need funding too. And then there's like this big conversation. And it turns out like the big moral of the story is that as long as the nuclear guy is in the conversation, the green guy won't get the funding to be as reliable.
Oh, so you have to give up on the nuclear in order to get your cheap energy, sir. Otherwise, the coal man gonna die.
Yes, that's it. And the coal man is dying of black lung. And it's been like, your citizens are going to die of black lung unless you fund green energy right now, immediately, please.
Okay, so on this amazing surge in the amount of renewable energy on the grid, they're putting this down to output from rooftop solar that is up 18%. And grid-scale solar that is up 9%. Now, I love this part of the article. I'm surprised they left this in here. This is from the ABC. It says, but despite the renewable surge, wholesale prices were up 88% for the last quarter of 2024 compared to the same period the year before. So there we go. Following this ever consistent trend of the more renewables we get into the grid, the higher prices go.
Yeah. We're talking about last year it being good and record keeping. It's also the first time bloody Lismore, the place that got all those floods. First time Lismore got a case of not just a fucking brownout or a blackout, but a case of load shedding where they literally turned the power off in order to keep power flowing elsewhere.
Yeah, I think we went through that at the time.
Yeah.
And by the way, like Lismore, like flooding in Lismore is like not a rare thing,
Pretty devastating last time it went through, though.
It was, yeah. I'm not taking away from that.
Yeah.
Okay, now here's our favorite project to pick on: the Snowy Hydro 2.0. So this is the program that started about 10 years ago under Malcolm Turnbull, and the original budget $2 billion. It's now reached $12 billion. And the latest update is that work on the project has actually stopped completely.
For fuck's sake.
Now this is to do with workers calling a strike on it. And you might think, hearing that, that's got to be the CFMEU or, some militant union. No, this is the Australian Workers' Union, who are often derided as Australia's worst union. This is the union Bill Shorten was head of. So this is to do with safety concerns over the tunnels that they are making there. And the tunnels and the rock, the type of rock that they keep encountering, this is apparently why the costs keep blowing out, because they need to get like new technology to be able to safely get through all the rock there. But anyway, it has been deemed to be so unsafe, so threatening to the workers' health, that the Australia's Workers' Union has actually announced a strike, and they're not sure as to when the project is going to resume. So, oh man, the Snowy Hydro just keeps on giving. It's like almost every week we've got some new delay to announce on it.
Well, it's not the 1800s. We needn't have people dying while doing these projects. So hopefully they engineer a plan ASAP, bring somebody from some fancy country who knows how to dig tunnels and get through our wacky rock we got going on over there.
Okay, so look, let's get on to something that it could be even worse than this, right? This is actually Australia's largest green hydrogen project. This is one that, despite that, it still doesn't get talked about all that much. So this is a program in Queensland. It was implemented by the previous Palaszczuk Labor government. This is one where the funding has blown to $12.5 billion. So probably even more expensive than the Snowy Hydro. Now, the new LNP government, led by David Crisafulli, has actually announced that they are scrapping funding for this project entirely. That's because they were due to pump another $1 billion into it. It was basically either you provide that funding of $1 billion or you call the entire project off. Well, the Crisafulli
hydrogen project.
Yeah. What's that?
I was gonna say, like, what fucking retard? I love, like, I think that a lot of the elite were sold on the idea of hydrogen as being like a fuel source. And I think there was like a lot of magicians back in the day using, like, metal hydroxide hydrogen fuel storage and etc. to, like, oh yeah, we'll heat up your coffee using this little thing, and etc. One, because I was there. And they thought that, like, hydrogen was going to be like the next biggest fucking thing. You got Twiggy Forest's both blue and green hydrogen projects, and now you get this.
Yeah, this is a green hydrogen project.
Yeah. Electrolysis project. Just use the electricity to fucking, like, power the vehicles. Don't turn it into fucking hydrogen, because you're losing it at about a fucking, like, 33% rate.
Yeah. But, I mean, like, what happens now? You're talking about a $12.5 billion project, and they're just stopping it altogether. I mean, do we know, like, how much money that is? $12.5 billion? That is an absolute fuck ton of money.
Yes, it
And
is.
now just saying no. And this isn't the first time this has happened. We've mentioned a few times the solar farm that they had constructed in Queensland. This one, not anywhere near as expensive. I remember it was around $350 million. But they actually dismantled the entire solar farm because of the fact that they simply were not getting enough solar energy. The sun wasn't shining enough. And they dismantled
Mr.
the whole thing.
Anderson, we've become much more efficient at destructing these solar panels.
So
You are not the
anytime
first
people
cycle.
talking about, like, likely cost blowouts of a nuclear plant, okay, sure. Like, most government infrastructure projects do go over budget. That's absolutely true. But please remind yourself of all of these green energy monstrosities that have just gone nowhere. And
A
the
quantity
cost
surveyor, like,
tens of billions.
there is no scope, there's no design for your fucking solar panel plant. There's no design for your battery fucking bank. Not that, like, actual design would, make a difference, because it would be in flux. Because you would actually have to deal with the flux of the network. But there is designs for nuclear power plants that are functional and that work.
Yes.
But bro, those three-eye fish in The Simpsons.
Labour actually used that in their memes that they
Yes,
were
they
putting
did.
out there. Yeah. The
It
three-eyed
works.
fish.
And the worst part was the concession of this, like, big political ad for renewables in Australia wasn't that, like, nuclear was bad, because they really couldn't actually say that at that point. They're like, oh, because nuclear is in the market, they're holding us all back.
All right. No, I forgot. We've actually basically got another example here. Well, I'll just quickly say another. Despite all of this stuff, Chris Bowen, the climate and energy minister, so he's pushing on with a renewable energy investment that expands a subsidies scheme that gives subsidies to property owners who are decarbonising their homes. That obviously would include solar panels, but it can be other stuff like replacing your gas appliances with electric appliances.
Eat my cock.
Which, remember, in the Australian Capital Territory is compulsory. Like, you must transition to electric appliances now. Okay, now the other example I was talking about was a wind farm, an offshore wind farm in Western Australia. So in September, Chris Bowen approved a 4,000 square kilometre farm. So this is off, God, what is that? Geography Bay? It's off the coast of Bunbury. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that.
Yes, Geography Bay, that's where the Busselton jetty, the extending one. If you go straight
the massive
south,
one.
yeah. If you go straight down south from that, that's Geography Bay.
Oh, so it is pronounced Geography Bay.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, interesting. Well, anyway, as you do, you put it up for companies for tender, and apparently 3 of those companies have bowed out of the race to take it on. So it might actually get to a point where they simply don't have anyone who's willing to invest in it, and there you go. There's another green energy project that you simply just kiss goodbye.
There we go.
Okay, now Australian business groups are putting an enormous amount of pressure on Labor at the moment to scale back the 82% target for 2030. That is to have 82% of the power on the grid generated by renewable energy by 2030.
Fuck.
Yes, that's the current goal. So the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry has made a submission to the Australian government about this, and so has the independent food distributors. So they represent people, this is obviously in agriculture and food. They use large chillers and freezers to supply and store food for around 60,000 retailers. So as you can imagine, they're very, very dependent on power to keep their industries going. They're all basically saying you can't do this without putting a lot of us out of business. But so far, Jim Chalmers, the treasurer, has brushed all that off. He's saying, no, we hear you, but we're not changing our position. On any of this, these targets remain, as does the net zero by 2050. Okay, well, I think we can move on now to the States. We'll try and get through this. I know we're at 2:10.
A little bit over time yet.
We are a little over. I'll try to go through the remaining stories a bit quicker. So, just quickly, the Transport Minister, Joe Halen, in New South Wales has come under scrutiny, and she has even been criticised by the Premier, Chris Minns, for the personal use of ministerial drivers. Apparently, she has not broken the law, but she has used several of these driving trips for personal use. So it's one of those cases where she's violated not the letter, but the spirit of the law. Despite that, she's set to stay in cabinet. Chris Minns has no plans on sacking her as of yet.
She's been like a female staffer, that's it. Under Chris Minns, by the way, who is the most wanker of all politicians, including his yarmulke.
Yeah, the guy is at the state level, the guy who was pushing for the most draconian hate speech laws. But did you guys notice that slip that he made a few weeks ago, where he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like, we have to do everything we can to protect what is very often a fragile multicultural community. Did you guys catch that?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. Because, that's something you're never, ever supposed to say about multiculturalism. The idea that it's fragile and that small things can set it off and destroy social cohesion.
And you didn't walk it back? Didn't talk about it? Just ignored it from then on?
Oh, shit. I
cut out there.
All right.
You're not coming through, right?
All right.
I'm fine on my end.
I remember we did talk a bit about the Prahran by-election. That happened when you had a Prahran, is that it?
Yeah, Prahran.
Member who tried to kiss one of his staffers. He had to resign because of that. But there's also the Werribee by-election. So that is actually only in a few days' time. This was triggered by the resignation of Tim Pallas, who was the Victorian Treasurer. Now, this is set to be a safe Labor seat. The Australian seems to be suggesting that the Liberals are going to win it. And they reckon that's going to be based on the financial mismanagement that Labor's been responsible for the past, 2 and a bit terms or whatever. Don't know about that. My prediction is that Labor will hold on to this. I'll just say, albeit with a reduced majority. That's all. There'll be a swing to the Libs, but I can't see the Libs actually winning this. Not in a safe Labor seat in Victoria, the most progressive state in the country.
All right.
Okay, let's skip to the Teals. Now, this is actually about the Teals and a few other parties. This is about donations, political donations, and the Teals are actually the top in terms of independent funds that are coming their way. So, the investor Rob Kildoulis, he was said to be the top individual donator in the country. He owns the company Keldulis Investments. He donated $1 million and $1,001,000 to Climate 200. Climate 200, of course, is the nest egg of Simon Holmes Court, and that's basically what funds all the teals. This is an interesting one. The Visey boss and Trump backer Anthony Pratt from the prestigious Pratt family.
Ooh.
They are Jewish, I might remind you. They gave a one-time $1 million donation to the Labour Party in January 2024. Gambler and mathematician Marcus Katsaris donated $999,978 to Climate 200 in the first half of 2024. Do you notice how close to the $1 million mark like all these donations are? They're like only a few dollars off like $1 million.
So there's some sort of limit that their accountants have put them on, or?
That's what it sounds like, yeah. It's showing that the Teals, even though they're supposedly independents, they receive multi-millions through Climate 200 to fund campaigns where the policies all basically look the same. So for all intents and purposes, they are a political party. It's not a group of independents. Okay, so let's just skip over to COVID. So thousands of people will be paid interest on top of refunds from the New South Wales government for invalid COVID fines that were issued during the pandemic, but were cancelled on legal advice. So, the things like being fined for being outdoors watching a sunset or something when you weren't supposed to, or not being outside for the purpose of your 30 minutes of recreation. All of those ridiculous laws that we had.
So this is gonna kind of, a lot of people are big on the COVID stuff. This is gonna put a lot of idea into people's heads that, oh, the system works. Look, they did an unjust and then they fixed everything by giving people money.
They're not exactly fixing everything.
Shit.
Sorry, that's some idiot. Who the hell still uses Facebook to call people?
So that's weird. Also, I'm trying to send a image that Florida's trying to communicate to you.
Oh, I don't see anything in the private chat.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to work it over. I'm trying to put it in Rocket, but it doesn't fucking work.
No dear. Well, no, sorry. I think we interrupted Fluoride's thought there about those fines and that.
Just that people are gonna have trust in the system because people are still bigly on the thing, not wanting to wear masks and all that, and thinking this is a big movement thing. They 100% overstepped. In my personal opinion, if it had been the fucking zombie virus, then they didn't go nearly far enough, and they basically had the borders open when there's the evil thing that's going to kill us all was out there. I was pretty spooked at the time. Got less spooked over it, but
that is the ironic thing is if we had been draconian with the border closures at the very beginning, we could have actually prevented the spread, like outside of Asia, but we didn't do that. And then that meant that we had to have draconian domestic lockdowns instead, which was much worse.
Yep.
Okay, so can I explain what you sent to me, Florida? It was just some weird sticker from the Bureau of People in Sydney.
Yeah, fucking. As you stand alongside the traditional custodians, take a moment to reflect and ground yourself while we pay respects to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders past, present, and emerging.
There we go. That's what he sent me. You think we don't know about this with fucking Noongars? Jesus.
But anyway, on these COVID fines that were given, there were 23,539 of them. And that actually made a total of about $5.5 million in revenue for New South Wales revenue. So, yeah, it was a shitload. And this was actually the Redfern Legal Centre and Morris Blackburn lawyers. They were the ones who challenged the legality of those fines, and they won. And so, given these fines were, handed out during COVID quite a few years ago, it makes sense that you'd actually want to whack interest payments on the refunds, especially given, how much inflation has been since then, because ironically, all the extra money we pumped into the economy post-COVID to get everything going again.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to education. And, finally we've got it. Sorry, was that someone trying to get in?
Yeah, it's just kind of how much was the fine, and getting up to $850, kind of an incentive, in a weird way, to have breaking the law when you see something as unjust. Might encourage people to do pretty stupid, incentivized things of breaking the law in the future if they think they can get away with it or get an interest payback of the fine.
Yeah. By the way, some people are not getting all of it. So it says here that, like, for example, someone who paid $5,000, and that apparently is a large amount issued for a fine, they could receive to $850 back. So, yeah. Still, they don't get a hell of a lot of it. All right. So here's something that was in the works for a while, and we've actually got it. So as of 2 days ago, I think, 3 days ago, there is now a national student ombudsman. Now, this, if you know anything about an ombudsman, it's basically like a complaints department for, whatever. In this case, it's for universities. This was supposed to tackle the supposed rise of sexual violence on university campuses in Australia. Now, I actually wouldn't be surprised if it has gone up, for the simple reason that we have so many
There's more Arabs.
And from particular racial groups like Arabs, like Pakis, like Indians, like Africans as well. You're even seeing a shitload of like Sudanese, like the really black as fucking midnight Africans.
Blue gums.
Look,
Yeah.
I think I said by my first guest appearance, literally there was this big, oh god, sexual filming on campus, and it turns out to be an Indian dude who was like sliding his Samsung phone under the toilets, and etc.
Classic.
And I was talking to you about this like 7 years ago, Finian.
Yeah, it might have been.
Yeah, might have been 8 years ago, actually.
I actually looked into this. So, once we get to about September this year, the racer would be 7 years old.
7 years there.
Yeah. Look, it doesn't just look at sexual violence. It also looks at racism and other issues facing tertiary students. But we were told at the beginning that it was primarily a reaction to sexual violence. But I remember we went through some of these reports or studies at the time, and a lot of them were surveys based on voluntary participation. So, you put out an email, would you like to participate in a survey on sexual violence on campus? And then you simply respond to it. Well, who responds to those surveys?
People who have stock in the game.
Yeah, so I mean, okay, sure, there would be a few examples of people who genuinely have experienced sexual violence. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen at all. But it would also be full of people who are willing to lie about it because they have an agenda. University students lying? Like campus activists lying? Oh, who would think of such a thing?
Oh dear God.
But is it going to do any good in the long run?
No, of course not. It'll be just like, Dutton before talking about those useless DEI appointments that we have in the public service. It's just going to be public, ridiculous jobs on a university campus that really serve no purpose.
Accusory sexual assault towards guys is selling, but a Jew's buying.
Well, there you go. That's the other issues, isn't it? Bloody Palestinian flag waving. I bet that would be the first thing that they investigate.
Yeah. Okay, now the government is claiming a victory here in that apparently the data is showing that more undergraduates are applying to become school teachers than in previous years. Now, the government has a range of incentives involved, like if you take a grad dip in education or, you make your way to being a teacher through the university system, things like cutting your HECS debt, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, also, if you want to become like a secondary school teacher, you're pretty much guaranteed a placement and you'll start off on 80K a year, like straight off. And, that's those prospects are a hell of a lot better than, let's say, if you take a psychology degree, for example. So it looks like there is actually a slow uptick in what's going on here. So according to these figures, across Australia, it shows a 7% increase in applications for teaching roles and a 14% increase in offers for education students compared to 2024. So in other words, more people are enrolling in those courses as well. All right. That's okay, I guess. I hope also that it doesn't say anything about this, but I hope that there's more men applying as well, because it's something I think I read this figure the other day. 78% of teachers are female.
Oh, fuck me, dude. I didn't know it was that far skewed.
Yeah, and well, I would say in primary school education, I'd say it'd be even more. There's
Agreed.
basically like no men left in primary school education. There's barely any.
Oh, the principal. And that's about it.
Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, so, and that's bad because that means, kids obviously spend a hell of a lot of time in school, and it means that a hell of a lot of them are basically not getting any male role model because a lot of them are probably being raised by single mums as well.
There's always Mr. Beast on YouTube.
I guess.
We got like a actual fucking like dystopian future inside our own lifetime, and it wasn't even fucking cool. It turns out it's just the internet plus like a matrilineal like academacy.
All right, so just quickly on the issue of childcare, not a big surprise, but the Greens are looking to leverage Labor to pump millions of dollars more into childcare should there be a hung parliament. So we've heard like these demands of the Greens before, like, should there be a minority government in this year, the Greens would have a number of demands that they would take to the table. And one of those would be in a bid apparently to fight the cost of living, would be to pump more money into childcare so that more couples can put their children into childcare while they go and earn their double income. And as we know, that actually just increases the cost of childcare further down the line, meaning that you effectively get back to where you started from. And you just keep pumping money into childcare,
I'm going to
And
subsidize childcare so
childcare
the parents will
coming up.
pay what they need for their child to be looked after, so I can subsidize childcare again, so the parents will pay what they need for their child to be looked after, so I can subsidize childcare.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
the
it's
rocket
just like,
paradox, but with literally the future of our country.
Well, the parent isn't going to be making the $100 or so an hour that it costs to have the kid in there for 3 hours at the end of the day. So look after the kid at home, I guess.
Not everyone can do that, really.
I
Unfortunately,
know.
we've lost
but
that.
wouldn't it be good if we could? Yeah, but I mean, imagine if we actually just drastically cut funding to childcare so that you would make it inconvenient for a woman to do that, to put her child into childcare and then go to work. What if she was actually incentivized to quit her job and raise the child at home? Because you
The
can do
goal is
that.
to squeeze the blood out of these stones, Finian.
Of course. Okay, so I think we actually covered this a couple of months ago, but so health groups, the health lobby, whatever you call it, is saying that the government is moving far too slowly on enacting legislation against insurance companies using genetic testing. So this is where they test you to see if you have a predisposition to, certain diseases. And if you do, well, either they won't cover you in their policy or they will charge you increased premiums. So a lot of people basically say this is not fair. You should not judge people based on that. And they want just an outright ban on insurance companies using genetic testing.
That is the ultimate. That is the ultimate determiner, though. Gattaca was a good movie and goes over this thing and somebody fighting the system, but that's a that's the ultimate thing of saying, can you really be insured if you have a faulty heart? And the answer is no. Or you're going to have to pay out the wazoo in order to insure yourself against that. And if, yeah, luck of the draw is what that comes to.
Yeah, it does. Look, I don't know. Based on this, I guess I do basically support that because, yeah, I mean, insurance companies are sort of like sophisticated gamblers, when you talk about luck of the draw or whatever. And I guess it would just be better for the general community if this was a piece of information that they did not have. They had to basically gamble blindly based on this because, I mean, yeah, what would it lead to? If you have a faulty heart or whatever, if you're a person basically guaranteed of having a heart attack, well, no insurance company in the country is going to touch you. It would be much better if you simply didn't know that about the person, I think.
Agreed.
And the socialist in me says, like, I don't think I should particularly, care about a citizens' health conditions. They should be covered universally, because I believe that we should live in a serious nation, and I believe that people need to have a fucking like a little net underneath themselves.
Yeah, and by the way, because I know amazingly we do have American listeners, and a lot of the time Americans think that we basically have like a Nordic healthcare system here. We don't. like, we have, maybe it's not as like corporatized as the American system, but it's still pretty privatized. Like, for example, you've got to pay for the ambulance. It's like about $1,000 actually. Like, and a lot of Australians don't even know that. So they call the ambulance thinking it's coming for free, and then they get left with this enormous fine. But yeah, I mean, like, we're basically forced to take out private health insurance because of so many things that the government simply will not pay for. So yeah, we don't have like a socialized medicine system here by any means.
$500 here in New South Wales, and I'd highly recommend, as long as it isn't you falling down and dying, you do the Uber to the hospital instead.
It's probably what you need. You know how I found out that you have to pay for the ambo? There was a friend of mine who, oh god, this sounds very degenerate, but he was smoking weed with this Asian kid,
Mm.
and this Asian kid had never smoked weed before, and so he went and smoked the weed, and he basically like had this full-on panic attack, and I think at one stage he passed out. So my friend, like in a panic, called the ambulance. The
Better than
ambulance
letting
arrived.
his mate die.
Yeah, well, all the ambulance did was gave him a paracetamol tablet and like talked him through it. You know, said like, "Hey, it's okay. You're just a bit high. You're going to be all right." And that was it. That was all that it was. And then they were left with like this $500 bill or something for it.
Yeah, a painful lesson learned.
Yeah, it was like a $500 Panadol. Okay, last stories. So, in agriculture, the Pastoralists and Graziers Association in Western Australia has actually entered voluntary administration. So, this is one of the small business lobbies. You know, this is a business lobby that does not represent big agra. It actually represents
fuck.
Oh no, you go on. What have you got to say there?
Okay, so yeah, they're small, but like they're about like 1/4 of the of the supplying grass for the dairy belt to the Harvey through functionally Geraldton belt.
Your Harvey,
Okay.
you said.
They supply us with grass. I don't particularly like them because my family doesn't particularly like them because they preemptively set prices high, but I don't like them suffering, put that way.
Well, that's what's happening now.
Yeah.
They've got into voluntary administration, and they had been under investigation before, and this was to do with what they referred to as financial irregularities and a funding shortfall as well.
Yep.
So, yeah, doesn't sound good. Usually, when something like this happens, well, the organization just goes kaput a few months later.
They're grass traders. That's what they are.
Okay, but to conclude, you are not happy to see this.
No, not because they're on the on season they're reasonably priced. On the off season, they are fucking terribly priced.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
whatever.
We'll end with two stories on defence. The first is we've got a defence strategic review that just came out. This is basically about the defence industry's workforce crisis. It warns that young recruits are struggling with the lack of connection to the outside world. Now, this report named a number of things. For example, a lack of national pride, and also a culture of entitlement in Australia. I think that's basically them saying people are too lazy to join the military. But certainly that lack of national pride, yeah. I mean, you've got to want to actually join the armed forces to fight for your country and what it represents. And if
I think Thomas World literally said it today. Australia means everyone, so Australia means no one. And also, if you say you're Australian, you're punished. So, what the fuck does it mean to be Australian?
Yeah, a country that's for everyone is for no one, effectively. There's nothing in it to be proud of. If you're nothing but an economic zone to buy and trade goods and services, you're not a real country.
Yes, I was about to say exactly that. They've got a mercenary attitude to things, and as soon as something will pay a little higher, jump on that instead. Why wouldn't you?
Internal construction pays more than the ADF.
Well, of course.
Probably a bit harder to work in construction, though.
The main thing that this article was talking about, though, was that, like, if you go into the ADF and you're on a submarine, you've got no internet access. So uh, they're saying that, like, there is this absolute lack of connection with the outside world. And they don't just mean, being able to scroll through TikTok or something. They mean
They're
just
coming
simple
down. Their fucking
No, but if
addiction
if
for
you
all these years are coming down, and they literally are getting the shakes from not being able to scrolly roll.
Oh, but really, I mean, okay, we make fun of people for stuff like that, but I mean, how would we go with, without the internet for months on end?
Ah,
You know,
awful. I've done it.
yeah, there you go. It's not only like total dopamine junkies who would be affected. I mean, everyone uses the internet on a daily basis. And I mean, that is primarily the way that these people would be keeping in contact with family as well. So it absolutely would isolate you in a big way.
So they're going to stick a 5G tower on top of the antenna of the submarine.
I don't know how you're going to actually fix that. You're going to have to go to the surface a lot more often. But yeah. Okay, now the final story we've got on Russia. Now, we've got this Australian couple. We've covered these guys a couple of times. They're a Russian couple, Kira and Igor Korelev. They're actually being held in Brisbane right now, and they're being accused of spying for the Russian government. And long story short, that's what it looked like. They really were.
So they were spies in the first place.
Yeah, they were. But you see, Russians have actually they've got a prisoner of war now named Oscar Jenkins. So he has been captured. I think he was fighting for Ukraine.
Is he the guy who people thought was dead? And they're basically demanding the Russian ambassador be expelled from Australia if he was killed?
I'm not sure about that, but the Russian embassy has accused Australia of authorizing this guy to fight with the Ukrainian army, and
Yeah,
this
he's a
guy is
foreign
former
fighter.
ADF. Yeah, and this guy is former ADF as well, so he's a trained soldier. So yeah, they've captured him. He's a current prisoner of war, and so what's going on now is Penny Wong has been contacted by the Kremlin to say, hey, do you want to give our spies back? Do you want to give Kira and Igor Korelev back to us? And if you do, we'll do a prisoner exchange where we give you Oscar Jenkins back.
Do they have anybody better?
Yeah, you're right, Fluoride. It is that guy. They thought he was dead for a while.
Yeah, they thought they'd been executed after being captured for some reason.
Yeah, but the Russian government has basically confirmed, no, he's alive, and now we're going to use him as a bargaining chip.
Fair enough. He is a mercenary. He's in the mercenary status as far as I can tell. And that means anything they do to him, well, he isn't protected by the Geneva Convention.
I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad when I beat up fucking PIs and paid muscle.
Sorry, one other thing I forgot to mention about this. Not only do they want that Russian couple released in exchange for Oscar Jenkins.
Ooh, what else?
They also want the Aussie Cossack.
The Aussie Cossack.
Simeon Boykov. Because you know that he is in the
He
Russian
fled
embassy.
the country, yeah. Oh, no,
Yeah.
he fled into the embassy, yeah.
He fled into the embassy. He's being held there. He's doing it Julian Assange style. But obviously, if he steps outside the embassy, he will be immediately arrested. Yeah, so they want the Aussie Cossack to be extradited back to Russia without any charges.
Huh.
There's something that I sit at night thinking about, why are people so reasonable about the geopolitics of our nation, such as you and I, are aligned with people that are literally targeted heavily by our own nation.
I don't know. Okay, anyway, let me kill that awkward silence by saying that is the end of today's episode 235, our first episode of 2025. So no race alive this week, and probably not for the next few weeks. We don't know. We'll keep you posted on whether or not we bring it back. We'll also keep you posted on Nolsey's show, if he gets that going soon.
I hope so.
But yeah, to get all the info that you need, go to theracer.biz. You can find that Telegram link and all that fancy stuff. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.